At age 2 or 3, the child was discovered that he knew all of the Torah by heart, including all of the Talmud, Rashi, Tosfos, and the Mashor. Notice he knew all the classical commentaries as well as the Mishnah and the Talmud itself. And everybody would run after the child and ask the child to tell him Sanhedrin, Bava Kama, Bava Metzia, entire tractates that takes people sometimes a lifetime to even learn and master. This child knew it by heart when he was 2 or 3. He became sort of a freak, and people wanted to see this, that actually there was a child who knew the Torah by heart. Obviously he hadn't studied it. He just knew it because he remembered it. Where did he remember it from? He remembered it from his mother's womb. In fact, Rav Aryeh Leib Bakst, the Rosh Hashiva in Detroit, told me personally that a friend of his, an associate of his from the Mir Yeshiva, who happened to be the son-in-law of Reb Chatzkel Levenstein, wrote him a letter that he went to see this child because he wanted to see up close exactly what the rabbis were saying, how true it is. However, his father-in-law, who was the noted saint, Reb Chatzkel Levenstein, Zichrono Livracha, Reb Chatzkel refused to go see the child, saying that this was a matter of faith, and he did not want to have a matter of faith confirmed by experience. And I want you to know that this was a question by me that I couldn't bring myself to a conclusion with. What's more important? Is it more important to have the faith or the experience? If you have an opportunity to have the experience, do you go for the experience or try to leave it in faith? And I've had my moments back and forth regarding this. The issues are, is it better to believe and have faith and go further because of your faith, or is it better to experience? The weaknesses of faith are, you always have doubters, skeptics. The weakness of experience is that it may confirm one event, but it might allow you to question other events because you'll want to experience the same experience for those other events, those other suggestions. And so, what was the way to go? Was the way to go like Reb Chatzkel Levenstein? Or was the way to go like his son-in-law, to actually see the child and experience firsthand that what the rabbi said actually is true? What happened to this child? Well, the father didn't know what to do. He was in a quandary. The child was absolutely gifted. The child would never lack for anything. He would know the entire Torah. From the other side, he couldn't have a normal upbringing. What teacher could teach him anything? And he was too young and immature to appreciate the depth of learning. So analysis he couldn't do, but he also could not be taught. He couldn't learn the values of good conduct, moral conduct, a Hasidic outlook, inspiration, enthusiasm, faith, and so on. These were things that were outside of him because he could not have a normal education. And his father, therefore, didn't know what to do. For the sake of the Jewish people, he was a living miracle. This was a validation of everything we had been taught. From the other side, the child could not have a normal life and wouldn't live normally. To determine what to do, what does a Jew do? A Jew always goes to a Rav, goes to a rabbi. So they convened the Bezdin. The Bezdin supposedly had the most illustrious rabbis of the generation. What I heard, I don't know if it actually happened, was that the Chazon Ish from Bnei Brak, the great Tribuna Rov from Yerushalayim, And presiding over the Bezdin was the holy Belzer Rebbe, who lived in Tel Aviv. And they got together and they decided that although it's important for Klal Yisrael to have miracles shown, for the sake of this child, it was best that the child would forget what he had learned and go back to Cheder to be a normal child. And so the Rebbe told him that the angel taught you the whole Torah. And the rabbis tell us that just before you're born, the angel gives you a little tap on the lip, and with that tap you forget the whole Torah. Most likely the angel forgot to give you a tap. And so I will give you a tap. But I promise you that if you will study the Torah with all of your heart as you grow older, you will merit to remember all that you will now have forgotten. With that, the holy Belzer Rebbe gave him a little tap under his nose, and the child became a normal child. It's now close to 60 years later. And the question is, if it would happen to us today, should we go and see the child as the son-in-law of Reb Chatzkel Levenstein did, or as Reb Chatzkel did, not to see the child, have everything based on faith? I struggled with that, and that was my sermon for Rosh Hashanah. Should you want to live in faith, or should you want the experience of God? What should you want? The faith or the experience? It's holier to have the faith. It's more satisfying to have the experience. And then I decided it based upon the story of the Tzemach Tzedek. The Tzemach Tzedek, the third Lubavitcher Rebbe, after the passing of his holy grandfather, the Baal HaTanya, came and told his grandson, I will come from heaven and teach you the Torah. And I'll teach it to you on the highest level. And the Tzemach Tzedek refused, because he wanted to toil in Torah. He wanted his knowledge of Torah not be a gift, but something that he accomplished and toiled for. Later, it was reported that he regretted this, because although he came to great heights in Torah, and he excelled with his own efforts, he could have used those efforts to go to an even higher level of toil, an even higher level of understanding the Torah. And so you too, my children, my friends, my associates, and even those who criticize me. The story is a true story. You're hearing this from a person who has also experienced miraculous things. And that I had a question whether this was proper or whether this was a fault. Whether it would have been better for me to remain among the faithful rather than among those who had experienced. And I decided, just as the Tzemach Tzedek had decided, that it is better to have the experience and to go from there and to work from the vantage point of the experience to go even higher in faith and in dedication. The angel missed the opportunity to make the child normal and made the child a miracle, a living miracle. The Belzer Rebbe made the child back to being normal. In the interim, a miracle occurred and was present.